Welcome to The Explainer. Our whole goal here is to break down complex topics by looking right at the source material. And today, we're going to do just that. We're diving into a pretty charged discussion from Fox News' The Five to really get a handle on the arguments that are shaping this midterm election battle. So, what kicked this whole thing off? Well, it was this single post. A really provocative one, you can see. The panel on The Five, they basically grabbed this and used it as the perfect launchpad to talk about the incredibly high stakes of the political fight they see coming.
All right, so the panel says this is it. This is the stage for the whole midterm battle. Let's dig into the key arguments and strategies that they think are really in play here.
Okay, so the first big thing the panel jumped on was this. They're saying the Democratic Party's message, well, it feels like it's almost all about going after former President Trump. And right away, they started asking, is that really enough? Can that strategy alone actually win an election?
And that question really opens up the first big theme they tackled, this idea of an anti-Trump message. Is just being against something or someone a strong enough platform to get voters on your side?
This quote they brought up, man, it really hits the nail on the head for their argument. The whole idea is that voters, well, they're looking for something more. They want a plan, right? A proactive vision for what you're for, not just a constant reaction against who you're against.
In this slide, I think just lays out that disconnect perfectly. On the left, you've got the political focus they're talking about. And on the right, what the panel argues voters actually care about. Real solutions to their problems and a clear vision for what's next.
So, okay, if the panel is right and the anti-Trump message isn't the main driver for voters, then what is? What's the number one thing on their minds? Well, according to this analysis, it all points to one thing, a really big thing.
And that big thing, according to the panel, there's no question about it. It's the economy, period.
Now, check out this number, because it's not just a statistic, it really tells a story. We're talking 72% of voters, according to this Fox News analysis, have a negative view of the economy. That is huge. That's not just a small group of people, that's a massive, overwhelming chunk of the country feeling the pinch.
And listen, the panel made it super clear. This isn't some abstract, high-level economic theory people are worried about. Nope. This is about real life. This is about what you see every single day, right? It's the shock you get at the grocery store checkout. It's what you're paying at the gas pump. It's the feeling that the cost of just living is getting out of control.
So how does all this economic stress connect to everything else? Well, the panel then took a really interesting turn. They started talking about how this anxiety is mixing with a big cultural shift, one they think is pushing a key demographic, in this case men, to vote in a way they're calling an act of rebellion.
So what does that mean? One of the panelists basically laid it out like this. You've got these economic pressures squeezing people, and on top of that, a cultural message that they argue has left a lot of guys feeling, well, pushed out, alienated, even attacked. And that feeling, that sense of being targeted, it has to go somewhere, right? According to the panel, all that frustration is being channeled directly into politics. It's becoming this act of defiance, and the place they're seeing it happen is at the ballot box.
And here's the really crucial point they made. This isn't your classic party line vote. It's not necessarily about being a lifelong Republican. The argument is that it's more of a pushback, a kind of rebellion against what they see as a culture that's constantly judging them, policing every little thing they say or do.
Okay, so then they brought up this really interesting term, luxury belief. And the way they explained it is pretty simple. The idea is, if you're genuinely struggling to put food on the table, you don't have the luxury, to worry about whether a politician said something offensive 5 years ago. That's a concern for people who aren't worried about basic survival. For you, it's all about who can help you pay the bills. Which brings us right to the other side of the coin. How does the Republican platform, as the panel described it, try to answer all these economic and cultural concerns we've been talking about?
So what's the pitch? Well, the panel pointed to these specific talking points. They're arguing, hey, we have a track record of slashing inflation. We brought down gas prices. And they frame it all as a stark, direct contrast to what's happening in the economy right now.
So, when you boil it all down, the way the Five panel sees it, this election comes down to a really fundamental choice. On one hand, you have the Democratic message, which they say is all about being anti-Trump, and on the other, you have the Republican message focused squarely on your wallet, on affordability, and on that cultural pushback. But just when you think the battle lines are perfectly clear, the panel threw in one last thing to think about, a real wild card.
There's a big Supreme Court decision on redistricting coming down the pike, and they suggested it could literally throw the entire map into chaos and change, well, everything we just talked about.